Have I?
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven.
Yes. But how is it the map?
If someone wants to find me, those are the groups they should look for.
And then?
You are the salt of the earth.
Whoa. Okay. Michael back with The Chosen and Beyond. So we just watched the Beatitudes sequence from season 2, episode 8, Beyond Mountains. I'm teared up from it. It's so good, so powerful. I love the imagery and just the way they captured it. It was so amazing. I love that as Jonathan Roumie, Jesus, is speaking the Beatitudes out, I love how the directors and the filmmakers are focusing on the disciples, and for the most part we get a different disciple for every beatitude. There's a small overlap, but not much. I just wanted to share this as I'm going to break this episode down. That's about halfway into the episode, slightly about 30 minutes into the episode, that scene that we just watched, but I wanted to start with it because that's really the masterpiece of this episode. But we definitely will cover other things that's going on. The disciples getting ready for the Sermon on the Mount, obviously that's really big. And there's some other things going on in the background with some other background characters, so we'll cover that. But also really quickly, I wanted to just share this. So I love this. This is something my wife made for Kingdom Kids at our church. And it's just really beautiful. You can see the Beatitudes with the little bees for the kids so they can talk through them. But we've got, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness on this side. And then we have the remaining. I won't go through all the other ones. I'm really going to focus on these 4 today in the video to try to concentrate a little bit more detail on my personal experience with these and some research I've done with our church leaders and some members. So International Church of Christ is our church that we belong to. And then we have some friends that are part of Cavalry Church. So really good groups there. And we discuss the Beatitudes a lot. But these are it's like you said, it's a map. And for me, through kind of meeting with the different church leaders, It's more of a stepping stones in a map, or you could almost call it directions in the map. And if you got to get to this road before you can turn left to get to this road, before you can turn right to get to this road. So they build on each other. So you can't like jump on. If you were to see, if the awareness kind of has to flow through for step by step. So that's just something I wanted to mention. And I'm going to focus my review today on, when we get to that scene by scene, on these 4, and then I will touch high level on these, because I think trying to cover all 8 of them is a lot. And actually in the scene with Jonathan and Paris, who play Jesus and Matthew, actually they added an extra one, because he's specifically speaking to Matthew. I think there's like a 9th one, but we'll save that for later. Yeah, let's get started. Let's break this down scene by scene. Let's get into it. Okay, so for this first scene, we have an introduction to Judas and his business partner, and they are negotiating the purchase of some land from the owner. He's from the tribe of Reuben. He asks what tribe they're from. They say Simeon, so he's hesitant to sell to another tribe since the land's been with his family for many generations, and he's just very emotional about it. It makes sense. This is his family's land. So what we see here, this is interesting. We zoom in here and Judas is on the right, his business partner on the left, and he's not sure he wants to sell, he wants a little bit more money, and Judas says we could give him a little bit more money if there's something valuable in the land when we dig for, they mentioned they're going to be doing this to build cemeteries. This is not really truthful, though. They got some kind of knowledge that there's something valuable in the land, and so although they're appearing to be helping here, they're really not. He does agree to sell the land here, but it's just foreshadowing Judas walking a fine line between doing the right thing and doing the bad thing. But moving on, we have the group of disciples here. They're discussing leaving the camp. They're arguing a little bit about who's spending time with Jesus, and I think it's Big James. He says, wait a minute, he's with Matthew again? Why is he always with Matthew? And we know that there's still some bad feelings about Matthew because he was a tax collector, but we know Jesus is repurposing those documentation skills for something else, which we know comes big here, Matthew 5, and the Sermon on the Mount coming up, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Moving forward here, we have Mary, and she's creating some posters for the big sermon to help spread the word. And then we also have Rhema, and she's learning to read. And so simultaneously, they're just working together. Really pretty scene that we have the women followers here supporting Jesus' ministry. So we know that Mary Magdalene has a big role, right, coming up in the gospel, right? We know she has a big role. Moving forward, we have Judas and his business partner, and they're discussing the deal. Judas feels guilty for deceiving the landowner since they knew that there was some valuable minerals there, some salt, I think they mentioned. But his business partner says, look, we still gave him a lot of money. Yeah, he could have got more money, but we're going to take that profit and we're going to grow our business. So he's just trying to talk him into being okay with it, which is what happens when we get tied down to earthly things, right? We love to do that. So moving forward here, we have little James, Thaddeus, and Nathaniel, and they're all looking for land to use on the Sermon on the Mount. They find an area they think that there is interest of them, but they're told that it's off limits, so they have to keep searching for that. They're working on that. And this next scene, so we have our investigators. I'm gonna call them the investigating rabbis. You should know their names by now. But so they're now sitting down with one of Shammai's advisors, and he's big in the Sanhedrin, and he's basically saying, okay, good, I'm glad you told me all these things. Go document everything you know about Jesus, all of the healings and the claims to be Son of Man, and that he has women followers, and document all those things and file it with the clerk, and because he's planning on using it, and make sure you let it also put in there that you went to Shimon weeks ago and he did nothing. And this gentleman being working for Shammai, the other big powerful group right now that's in this Sanhedrin, basically he's going to use this as a political weapon, right, to seize more power. So their actions here are now starting to make an impact on things, but not exactly the impact they want. So they still want more to happen. So in the meantime, we have Matthew here, and they're looking over the camp. They're having this really interesting discussion, and Jesus is explaining to Matthew that there's different types of people that will be coming for this sermon. So they have to make sure that this one it's going to be different with their words. They got to reach everybody in different ways. So it's He's really just laying the groundwork here for this being very different. Jesus tells Matthew, beginning, I'm going to talk about the salt, and Matthew says, I've got some feedback on that. I really think the beginning needs to be changed because the Roman soldiers, when they would conquer villages and towns, they would sometimes throw salt on the land to destroy the land after they won those battles. So he's saying, I don't think that we want anyone mishearing the use of the word salt, so I think we need to begin a different way. And I like Jesus, Jonathan's looking at him here. Okay, let's work on this together. It's a very cool moment because we know obviously that he's foreshadowing the Beatitudes here to be first, which we saw in the beginning here of this video. So now we fast forward just a little bit here. The disciples actually get help from Judas and his business partner. They find the owner of that land, they buy him a drink, and they're not able to convince him to let them use the land. And then Judas and his business partner, hey, is this the famous person that's doing all the healings? He's saying, there's thousands of people coming. Don't you want, as the landowner, don't you want your land to be associated with his visit? And he thinks about it and goes, yeah, that sounds good. I'll give you permission. It sounds like I'm going to make some good money. So moving forward, so cool scene in that, so tie-in of bringing in Judas now to the few of the disciples now know what Judas looks like. He was part of that task, getting the land. So moving forward here, we see things are building up. We have the Sermon on the Mount notices there's going to be a big sermon, please come. We just have, I really love this montage with a lot of really quick scenes. I just grabbed a few, but we saw Big James putting up notices. Andrew and Simon and Mary Magdalene are all going around passing out notices. And then you see Mother Mary giving one here to one of the poor gentlemen. It's for everybody, right? This is for everyone, not just for the wealthy or the privileged. And then meanwhile, we have Thaddeus and Nathaniel, and they're working on this drawing that Nathaniel's created, which is going to be like the platform he's going to walk out to. So he's going to have this nice little balcony that he's making. So this is cool. Also reminds me of the tabernacle scene right now. We have Jesus has woken up Matthew. This is the beginning of the scene that we saw at the beginning of this video review, right? This is Jesus speaking the Beatitudes, Matthew 5. And he's asked Matthew to record what he's going to say. So this is where it gets really powerful. And it gets into a lot of scripture. Jesus starts to speak and he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. And then we see Nathaniel under the fig tree here. So this is a really interesting moment. I think it makes a lot of sense that they chose Nathaniel for this beatitude, number one, poor in spirit, because Nathaniel's character, he's a very lost person. He had his career with Rome and everything, but that wasn't really making him happy. He didn't really want that, and he didn't find Jesus until he lost it all. So the poor in spirit is really, at least for me, is recognizing that we don't really have a spirit without the Lord, without God. And so there's also a tie-in to absence of self, like taking yourself aside and realizing that I'm empty, right? Like I'm empty without God. And also just removing selfishness, I think also comes hand in hand with that, and putting God first before all things. So once you realize that, hey, I really need to stop focusing on myself and focusing on my relationship with God, I think that's a huge moment here that they're revealing. That was one of the breaking moments for Nathaniel. The second one is, blessed are those who mourn. And immediately we see Andrew and Simon here. Andrew is mourning for the loss of John the Baptist, of course, so he's very upset from that. But what is he really mourning for? Could this be the loss of those things around him that he didn't realize? And there's a captivity to sin. So the second beatitude here is, once you realize that you're empty and you start to get filled with the Spirit, you see all those around you who don't have that. And so I just feel the Spirit is what John the Baptist was out spreading the world to be filled with redemption and salvation, and that he's just really mourning the loss of John and all the works that were happening through John, but that is going to now happen through Jesus, and I think he's just working through that, and Simon is there just trying to comfort him. So it's really hard to, those first two Beatitudes, realizing that you're empty and then looking around and seeing, oh my gosh, there's all this sin, there's all this captivity to sin around me. It's overwhelming, and it can be very saddening, right? Mournful, saddening. The third beatitude, blessed are the meek, immediately moves to a scene with little James and Thaddeus. I have to say, I really love these characters. Watching them, they're so kind. I think that's the key here. Kindness in their place on earth, for they shall inherit the earth. this is a bit overwhelming, but this almost feels like a tie into submission, right? Those who humble themselves under God's authority and realize that we're all equal. That is how you move forward and be humble. Humbleness before God and equalness with those around us. So that is really, meek doesn't mean weak, right? So it's really humbleness and equality. And then moving on to the Beatitude 4, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Sons of Thunder, love this shot. It's one of my favorite episode reviews that I did. James and John, Sons of Thunder, they want justice for everybody. But what is really righteousness for man, right? So there's righteousness for man, and then there's righteousness for God. So righteousness for man is what James and John are trying to do. They want to do the right thing, although in this situation they wanted to revenge, right, for the Samaritans that were mean to them, but they want their actions to be true and sincere and pursue righteousness in the land, right, and with others, around others. And so that's half of it, but the other half is righteousness before God, and that's actually tied into Isaiah 64 and in Romans 3. Righteousness before God comes through our faith in Jesus and our belief. Romans 3:21, and they will be satisfied. So those who seek righteousness, though, they will be satisfied. So those first four are, I really think, like the cornerstones of moving forward. And so the remaining ones, I'm not going to go as deep in because I still want to study more scripture before I do that. Blessed are the merciful. We see a beautiful scene of Mother Mary and Magdalene and Rama, and of course we know they're very kind characters, and they've provided a lot of aid and mercy to others. So focusing on the needs of those around them and helping them no matter the cost, that's what I see as being really merciful, right? Every time Mother Mary, she's all over it, right? She's whatever needs to be done, she jumps right to taking care of others around her. And I think that's really beautiful. So they will receive mercy, of course, right, in return. And Beatitude 6, blessed are the pure in heart. We get a scene, a little bit of a spoiler here, scene of Thomas and his, I'll just say, love interest Rama. For blessed for them, they shall see God. I think that has to do with the purity of the heart and its connection with the Spirit on earth. And I'm not sure if it's actually seeing God, but seeing God's vision. I think there's a little bit of a separation there. We do know from Old Testament that you're not really supposed to be able to see God, and that's debatable, but I see that being seeing God's vision. And so Beatitude 7 here, blessed are the peacemakers. So we go, you can Simon's just off the edge, Simon Peter, and then we've got Philip and Simon Z, and for they shall be called sons of God. So they're the soldiers, they're those who pursue beyond righteousness and seek solution on earth and in heaven. They are looking to not only for themselves to be righteous, but to pursue the righteousness through others. And that's got a little bit of a tie into discipleship there as I see that, and they shall be called sons of God. And then I call this Beatitude 8 Part 1 because they split it in two. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. We have a scene here of John the Baptist being arrested. I don't believe I ever saw this scene anywhere else. So you're basically going back in time. This is a flashback, and you're seeing that happen in that moment. I thought it was, with the sunset, I thought it was like captured really beautifully. You can definitely tell it's John with this huge beard. But basically focusing on John the Baptist, who sacrificed his whole life for what was right and just. And he would not surrender to earthly conformity, right? He's not going to change his ways for the earthly authorities. And he wanted to pave the way in blood, if necessary, for the kingdom of heaven. So that's really powerful there. And then we to the tie into one last Beatitude 8 Part 2, looking to Matthew here. And blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you. And so focusing on Matthew in this scene, we know that Matthew goes on for many years in Scripture, and we know that he has a lot of rough times. All of the disciples are going to have rough times. So I think this is just a meaning that all other Christians who follow the teaching of Jesus and spread his word, they're going to be persecuted, but rejoice, your reward in heaven will be great in heaven. So we know there's a lot of persecution there, and this comes along with discipleship, right? So moving forward here, so we wrap up the Beatitudes there, and we see Judas coming in, and so Jesus and Matthew have finished their preparations. The sermon is getting ready, is almost here. The sun is coming up. Judas is walking. He's looking for the other disciples. He finds Barnaby, who leads them to them. You see here really quickly. He says, you'd be good to follow us. I love Barnaby and Shula. They're really fun, cool characters, and there's a lot more with them later that I don't want to get into spoilery, but they're really fun characters. You can see Barnaby has like a little bit of a limp, and Shula's blind. They're
devotion to following Jesus is very strong, even though they have injuries, they have maladies. And then, everyone's showing up to the party. We got Atticus and Gaius here. They show up, they look at each other real quick and then look back and they're like, oh boy, what did we sign up for here? This is bigger than we thought it was going to be. And we knew that they were going to investigate. And so then Barnaby brings Judas up, and Nathaniel says, hey, I remember you. You were the guy in the bar who helped us convince the landowner to have the land here. Let me come introduce you to everybody. And of course, he introduces him to Simon here. And he's just what's really, I like that they brought all the disciples in here right before the Sermon on the Mount, which is really cool. So then Mother Mary helps Jesus choose a garment. He's with the other women followers, and they're all trying to give him different colors, and he settles on blue, and he says it's time, and she lets him walk past. Jesus walks up to the entrance of the platform, and we see the multitudes. And they did a great shot here with all the different costume colors. You can just see they really got a lot of people involved. Jesus looks out, and he's very ready to give this speech, and he knows it's going to be impactful. He's just super full of passion for delivering the message, So that wraps up this review of Season 2, Episode 8, Beyond Mountains. It ends in a cliffhanger here. You don't get to quite see the Sermon on the Mount, but if you watch the whole episode, there are rehearsal portions that you can hear and see. And there's actually a one scene where Matthew is like reading through them. He's like, really? Did you really want to say all these things? And it's kind of really funny. So I recommend you watch the entire episode, but I wanted to capture the big components here. But wrapping up, thank you for joining us today with The Chosen and Beyond. I think the Beatitudes are an amazing map, like Jonathan Rumi has portrayed here in the character of Jesus. It's a map to following Jesus. Look for these kinds of people when you're looking for me, right? And they will put you on the path to find me, and you'll need some directions, and I'm going to give you the directions here. And he also mentions digging, right? Digging for the directions. Right? It's not going to be easy for everyone to understand. You will have to go through levels of understanding, and you'll have to put in effort, or you will not find all the directions. So I thought that was a really powerful way of portraying the Matthew 5, the Beatitudes. So that was it for this episode review. Please watch The Chosen at thechosen.tv. The links will be in the description. Please give me a thumbs up and a subscribe if you enjoyed this. And we will see you next time. And Season 3, The Sermon on the Mount, will be my next video. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.